So, Petz with a Z. Apparently this was like a biggish thing back in the day. It started with some nobodies who got bought by other nobodies, and then finally Ubisoft. Most of the games in the series, which started in 1995, are pet simulators ranging from dogs with a Z, cats with a Z, and horses with a Z. Petz Dogz 2 with 2 Z's for the Nintendo DS is not. Released in 2007 alongside 2 Wii and PS2 versions, Catz and Dogz, a sister game for DS, Catz, and a Gameboy Advance version, Petz Dogz 2 is actually a very mediocre minigame collection. Yeah, so the pet sim aspect here is virtually non-existent. The player gets to choose a dog at the start of the game that they don't get to name, but they can swap it out at any time with any of the other dogs. The dog doesn't need to be fed or cared for, it can be petted, but there isn't much else to do with it but look at it. It can't even be fed or played with as far as I'm aware. There's also a room decorating aspect. The player can place stuff in their room as they play through the game. They unlock more rooms to decorate. The room is the only non-touch controlled part of the game. The player can control the camera with the D-pad. To unlock more rooms, as well as items to decorate the rooms with, the player needs to go through minigames, most of which are ancient card games that probably don't appeal much to kids. Upon entering a store, all of which have their own items, the player gets a random minigame but can also back out to re-roll until they get a game they like. The games have so few variants and are so repetitive, plus luck dependent a lot of the time, that I spend a lot of time re-rolling just to avoid the bad ones. Minigames also come in 3 difficulties, easy, medium, and hard. For competitive games against an AI, this means the AI cheats more and there's more rounds, which can really drag them out. And for single player stuff, they tend to come in slightly more complex patterns and have shorter timers. In the case of ties in any game, favor goes to the player over the AI. Every minigame in the collection is also controlled entirely by touch. Let's run through them quick. Poker doesn't need much explanation. Draw 5 cards, shuffle cards you don't like back in, try to make card combinations. Here's a chart of combinations for people who don't know poker. Unlike real poker, Petz has no interest in the fun parts of poker. There's no ability to bluff or bet. After getting the hand and redrawing, the players all show their hands, and the one with the best hand gets a point. Not even a scoring system for better hands, just a binary single point for the person with the best one, which means fishing for the really high tier hands is a completely worthless strategy. Putting aside that the target audience of 8-year-old girls probably doesn't like or understand poker, this is a horribly unappealing version of the game that strips out any enjoyable aspect of it. Blackjack is another gambling game like poker, but unlike that game, this one doesn't lose much in the transition, as Blackjack isn't a very interactive game. All active players, as well as the dealer, draw 2 cards with the goal of getting as close to 21 as possible without going over. All cards are worth their face value except face cards, which are all 10, and 1, which can be 1, 10, or 11, depending on what's most convenient. After looking at their cards, the player can choose to hit or stay. Going above 21 is an automatic loss, called a bust. The dealer also plays, drawing until they hit a number between 17 and 21, or they bust. Any player that has a number higher than the dealer or is not busted, in the case of a busted dealer, scores 1 point, and whoever has the most at the end of a few rounds wins. It's a perfectly adequate version of Blackjack that again no kid is going to care about, but it's one of the better games in the collection. Sevens is yet another card game, this one more age appropriate. Sevens are pulled from the deck before it's divided up between all players evenly. The sevens are placed in a column and players take turns placing cards that are the next up or down from cards on the field. So to start, players can only place 6s or 8s and so on. Whoever runs out of cards first wins. This game is more or less determined from the draw and goes by very slowly. It's hard to strategize in sevens, so I tended to avoid it due to lack of control. Crazy eights, more cards. Each player gets 5 cards with the goal of emptying their hands. A card is drawn from the deck to start, and players need to play a card that matches the suit. Whoever plays the largest card gets to lay the next one first. If a player doesn't have a matching suit, or a joker which can be used regardless of the suit as a free win, they draw until they have one. If the deck is gone, then they take all the cards that the players before them have played. When laying their second to the last card, a player needs to call last card or else they're punished with a penalty of drawing 5 cards. This continues until one player clears their hand, at which point players get points equal to the face value of their cards. Face cards are all 10s, and the winner is determined by the lowest score once all the rounds are done. The dominant strategy, as far as I found, was to start with the best cards for field control until the deck runs out, then shove off low cards on opponents and praying. Crazy Eights is fun. It's probably the best card game in the collection, but it can drag on if the deck runs out. Like, sometimes the AI just loves to shuffle their cards around between each other. In Old Maid, the deck is divided between all players. The goal is to discard cards by making pairs. To this end, players push cards they don't want on the player to the left, slowly whittling it down until one player is left with the lone joker and eliminated. It drags, it's very luck dependent, it's not fun. Memory is the classic game of memorization. A bunch of cards are laid down, players take turns flipping up 2 looking for matches. If they get one, they flip again. If not, it passes to the next player. Even on easy, the AI is very good at memory, and even more unfortunately, the player always goes first, giving the 2 or 3 AI players a nice head start on completely stomping. Avoid. President is finally the final card game. The deck is divided evenly among players with the goal of emptying their hand. The first player places cards either alone or in groups of the same number. The next player needs to place the same number of cards of a higher number. Whoever places the highest cards and nobody else can place one gets to start over with the first card or cards. Placing 4 cards at once causes a revolution, which causes the game to go high to low instead. My general strategy was to start low with whatever number I have the most of, in terms of number of cards, play it out and hope to maintain control, and repeat, which usually works out. After each round, the player in first dumps cards off on the player below, which is pretty busted honestly, because it's just getting rid of bad cards for free. President is pretty good, but it's another one that can kinda drag on a bit. With the card games done, we move on to the action games, I guess? I don't know what to call them, but they're the more active games. Countdown is red like green light. The player moves forward by scratching their touchscreen to shit while the top screen counts down from 10 at various speeds. There's nothing to it, and I only played through it once. It's just pretty boring. Bowling, I think, doesn't emulate well. It's single-player bowling. Roll a ball, hit pins, try to reach some score goal depending on difficulty. If the ball goes down the center, it seems to be basically a free strike. Anytime I hit the pins, it was basically a strike. But either this minigame itself is very fucky, or it just does not emulate well, because actually getting the ball to move is iffy, and whenever it does, it just likes to go all over the place. It's not the best way you could experience bowling by a long shot. Air hockey is touch-controlled air hockey. Players on opposite ends of the air hockey board hit the puck and try to get it in each other's goal. It works fine. The AI cheats very hard on normal and above. It's functional, controls fine. It's very passable. Hide and seek is, I guess, a shooting gallery. The top screen shows the dog to find, and dogs pop up in a poorly drawn park. The player needs to touch all the required dogs in a time limit. It's fine. Some of the dogs look a bit too close to each other, and makes it a little trickier, I guess. It's whatever. It's fine. In hula hoops, the player tosses hoops at the 3 dogs on the top of the screen. To start off, the tossing is fucky. Not sure if that's the emulation or what. It's just very hard to aim them and very hard to actually determine the power to get them where you want to be. After a dog gets a hoop, it will temporarily spin it to rack up points towards the needed total to be reached in a time limit. Maxing a dog out with 5 hoops gives bonus points, and the player is supposed to pass between all 3 dogs to keep them all going. I'm pretty sure that my difficulty with this one was trying to do it with the mouse. So this one might be fine on DS, but if you decide to emulate this thing for whatever reason, I would just skip on hula hoops. Beats is a rhythm game, but one with a classic DS gimmick. One input is done on the touchscreen, the other is done through the microphone by clapping in real life. I certainly could have and probably should have set up my mic to try it, but I couldn't be asked, and I did not want to have to loudly clap while I played this game, or bump my mic, or whatever. Also, this is the only game that can't be paused, so if you mess up and accidentally start this one, or you fail a little too hard, you gotta play the whole thing out, and the song is like 2.5 minutes long. No thank you. Nope. Reversey, better known as Othello, is a classic board game. Players have reversible chips and take turns laying them down. Any opponent's pieces between 2 of the player's pieces are flipped to match the players, giving a lot of strategy to the player's 1 chip placement each turn. Going for edges and corners is the strongest play, as they're much tougher to flip. Reversey is a fun game, and this is a fine little AI game. I played this one a lot when it came up because I genuinely got a little bit of enjoyment out of it, which is more than I can say of the other ones that I would frequently play. The final few games are puzzles, single-player puzzles. These are the easiest games, and at a certain point the game will devolve into refreshing for these just to get on with this shit, just to get it over with. As if anyone besides myself would play through this in 2020, but you're gonna see a lot of these if you decide you wanna. The jigsaw puzzle is a jigsaw puzzle. This is the easiest minigame in the game. Each difficulty adds more pieces, but it's still a fucking jigsaw puzzle. It could not be any easier. Asian puzzle is a sliding tile puzzle. These ones are kind of neat little brain teasers, but there only seems to be like 10 or so variants, so after a couple rounds it's going to be a little repetitive. They're generally easy, so they're not a bad choice. They're kind of neat the first couple times. I have no idea why they're called Asian puzzle. 10-piece puzzle is a tetromino puzzle, slotting oddly shaped pieces onto a board to form an image. There's only one design for each difficulty, so after the first one there's no challenge. This is another good option for just pushing through the game. I think it's kind of neat the first time, and then it's very repetitive after that. The final game is Take Two. Match two tiles that can reach each other in 2 turns. Those are not 2 turns of a board game, but 2 turns, like 2 left-right turns, without passing through other tiles. Matches can be made on the outside, and it's possible to make unwinnable boards, but pretty uncommon. On the higher difficulties, the timer is shorter, but on all difficulties, making matches increases the timer. Another very easy one, very difficult to fail, good choice, passable, whatever. Now about how the game looks, I guess. It's kind of fine. I like the low poly art style stuff, and a lot of the items and furniture are pretty cute. I like all the Japanese type stuff. The modeled dogs look good too. They're distinctive, bouncy, and well modeled. I mean, they're pretty cute. The 2D stuff is a lot less impressive, and unfortunately that's what you're going to be seeing through most of the game. The really generic dog sprites appear in basically every minigame, mostly on visually bland cards on a plain green screen. Most of the game is just staring at these extremely visually bland minigames over and over. The music in the game is okay. It's inoffensive, bland background noise. It's not intrusive, but it's like the most milquetoast bland shit and just blends in, especially based on the fact that there's only like 5 songs maybe, so I guess it's better that it's not something obnoxious, but And that's pretty much it. Every 20 items unlocks some more items in the stores. Getting 160 items plays a short still image cutscene where the dogs have a party, and getting every item rolls the credits, which I forgot to start my recording software for, so I will not be showing the credits. Outside of the minigames, there's local multiplayer that I did not try, and a little painting mode where an outline of a dog is shown to color in. Petz Dogz 2 is incredibly repetitive and boring. The pool of minigames is already shallow and repetitive, but if playing around long and bad games by skipping them, refreshing around them, there's going to be a lot of fucking jigsaw puzzles and other unchanging the puzzle ones because they're just the quickest to get through. There's no purpose to the pet sim aspects of the game. The dogs don't do anything. There's no reason to interact with them besides the fact that they're cute. You can't even really interact with them. Like, obviously, you look at Nintendogs on the same console, and that's a pretty light pet sim where you don't have to feed them or take care of them, but there's some games that you can play with them. You can toss them the disc, play with toys, pet them. And at least the games in that are, like, related to dogs, like throwing a frisbee to a dog or going to a dog show or dog things. And this is a bunch of random card games and just, like, shitty mini games that would be booted from Mario Party for being too bland and generic. It almost feels misleading to be a dog game because it's just a shitty card game collection. I really can't even imagine a kid enjoying the game because most of its minigames are slow-paced, luck-dependent card games. It's honestly just a horrible slog to push through. Nothing ever changes, there's no climax to the game, it's just an endless slow grind of 10-piece puzzles and Asian puzzles that comes to a whimpering end 256 items in. It's a game with almost no value, it's really awful. So anyway, next will be a DSi exclusive title, a racing game. I don't know how many racing games are on the DSi, so that might make it really obvious. Or maybe not, I don't know. It's not the Bike and Domo one. So yeah, like, subscribe, watch some of my other videos. Bye.